How do we navigate the current landscape?
Well, one basis for hope is when you look at how much of our suffering is self-caused, you immediately see that we could just stop doing that, right? I mean, if most of human misery and inequality and conflict and violence is a matter of the stories that people are telling themselves and finding credible, and the fact that those stories are discordant, then you see that virtually all of human suffering and chaos is just tissue thin. I mean, it's a bad dream. It's just, thoughts that people are finding compelling, and they could cease to find those thoughts compelling. Not much has to change. Again, it's not a story of there being a sufficient number of bad people in the world to make life unlivable, right? That's almost never the case. The numbers of truly bad people, true psychopaths, true sadists, it's always tiny, right? It's the tiniest rounding error on what is actually the case, which is you have psychologically normal, compassionate, otherwise good people ruled by bad ideas, and ideas that put them in explicit conflict with other human beings who have different ideas. All of this, the status quo, when you look at it, can be very depressing, but the basis for hope in radical change is right there on the surface, because again, there's almost no problem human ingenuity can't solve, right? In the end, there's unless, and this is a point that the physicist David Deutsch made recently, which I find compelling. Unless there's some law of physics that rules it out, any change in the universe that is possible in the presence of sufficient knowledge, right? And I would add, you need sufficient cooperation to implement that knowledge, right? But really, the sky is the limit in terms of how good we can make human life on the basis of our understanding how the world works and on the basis of a disposition to spread the wealth around, right? And to cancel the truly unconscionable disparities in good and bad luck we see in this world. I mean, just that, there are many of us who are born with every opportunity and virtually no impediments to our well-being. And there are those who are in the opposite circumstance. And none of us are responsible for where we have entered this game. No one watching this can claim to have decided not to be born in some war-torn country to, totally irresponsible or absent or, soon to be dead parents, right? No one who wasn't orphaned in Syria in a civil war is responsible for that. And no one who was born neurologically healthy is responsible for that. You can't account for the fact that you don't have brain damage, right? I mean, just list your advantages, for as long as you like. Really, none of them were brought into being by you, right? You're a beneficiary of all of these gifts, insofar as you have them. And if you're intelligent and you're capable of great effort, those things too are mere inheritances. They're genetic, they're environmental, there's some combination of the two. But the fact that you weren't murdered in a ditch as a child, right, is something you can't control. So, the better part of compassion ultimately is to recognize that you want other people to thrive. You want to cancel these disparities in bad luck insofar as you can. And more to the point, you want to help build a society and a civilization that becomes a machine for doing this, right? You want a fair and just society that the wealthier it becomes, the more it makes life, even for its poorest members, better and better, such that the human world becomes unrecognizable ultimately, and unrecognizably good. And there's no question that's possible. It's already happened for some of us, right? If you look at the difference between the best life on offer now and the worst, I mean, it's as stark as you can imagine. I mean, you just can't possibly exaggerate how much better it is to live in a peaceful, orderly society and to be wealthy and healthy and surrounded by people who you love and who love you, and to be surrounded by increasingly happy strangers who just want to cooperate with you, right? And their hopes and dreams are being realized on a daily basis, and crime is low and social trust is high, and all of that's possible. And many of us have lived this, if not all the time, certainly in our most secure moments, and increasingly it's the norm certainly in affluent societies. It's the norm, and insofar as it's unraveling in places, that is worth worrying about and addressing. But there are places on earth where nothing like that is remotely possible at the moment. There are places that have known civil war or something like civil war for as long as I've been alive. And on top of that, they're ravaged by infectious illness at a level that hasn't been true in any place I've lived for more than a century. So yeah, I think we have a global responsibility to make life better and better. And insofar as we lose sight of that responsibility or disavow it because we think it's no longer possible, because we think that there isn't enough wealth in principle, there are not enough good things to share, we're not going to build enough knowledge to engineer a tide that lifts all boats, right? And so we have to hunker down and defend ourselves because the barbarians are at the gates, right? I mean, if that's the future, well, it's going to be increasingly dystopian and terrifying. So we do have a choice to make, and at the most basic level, we have to safeguard the tools by which we would make such a choice and continually correct course. And for that, there really is no tool better and no substitute for human conversation, wherein we converge on a fact-based understanding of what's happening in the world.